member for Clark.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. Attorney, Advocacy Tasmania works with some of the most vulnerable people in Tasmania, and they publicly expressed concern about the draft Guardianship and Administration Amendment Bill and the time available for consultation. Some of their concerns with the bill include there are no supported decision-making provisions embedded in it, no criminal provisions for abuse of guardianship administration orders, including by public bodies, no compensation provisions, no independent oversight, gag provisions remain, emergency orders are still in place, but there's a new provision which allows guardians the right to authorise medical research on a person without their consent. These are no trifling matters. You have allowed only 3 weeks to provide feedback on this bill, and there's been no direct input from the Tasmanians affected or likely to be affected. Attorney, will you commit to extending the consultation period so that vulnerable Tasmanians and their advocates can properly be consulted and have input about a bill which will have life-changing impact on them?
Honourable Attorney-General.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for Clark, Ms Johnston, for her question. These reforms have been something that has been worked on for quite some time now. I can confirm Advocacy Tasmania knows that. I have been talking about the second tranche of the Guardianship and Administration reforms in terms of quite an extensive change to our, I'll call it GAB framework. In my department's work on that, there has been extensive consultation with a broad range of stakeholders affected or wishing to have input in the second tranche. Before the member, which is her usual style, plasters something on Facebook that I haven't answered the question, I will address her question in the hope that she doesn't misrepresent me. So as I've said, this has been something that's been worked on for quite some time. We have, as my department has offered briefings to any party wishing a briefing and detailed briefings to any party that's interested in the reform. I realise 3 weeks can be a short time, but in the context of the broad range of stakeholder input that's already been provided, 3 weeks is something that I believe my department can get those briefings done. And the reason for that is, and I do find it quite a contrast from the Advocacy Tasmania position before calling for the urgency of introducing this reform, I want to get this reform tabled this year in Parliament. And Advocacy Tasmania has been leading the call for me to do that, and now want me to delay that. So I would urge Advocacy Tasmania, and I'm pretty sure they have actually agreed to a briefing now, to have that briefing and provide that very valuable input. I know that Advocacy Tasmania is funded by the government to represent vulnerable Tasmanians, and that is what I hope they will do and always do. And that we can take into account stakeholder views in then coming back with a bill that we can table in this House. So can I reiterate, Mr Speaker, there has been a lot of work that's been done on this second tranche reform. We know also that my department has put into the bill, the draft bill that currently exists out for consultation, a lot of information that was ascertained through the independent review by Damien Bugg, AMQC, to carry out important work looking into the public trustee and indeed the broader guardianship and administration reform. So again, extensive work since in the last 12 months, in fact. 3 weeks in the context of the consultation that's occurred over at least the last 12 months, I hope is sufficient time. In the unlikely event all of those briefings weren't done, then I would reconsider the tabling of that. But I really do want to stick to the timetable that I have set, that I have promised this House and that I have promised stakeholders.
Here, here.